Good morning. Happy Friday. Hope you've had your coffee fix. It is the Friday before a long weekend, and you know that when everyone you talk to is happy and in a good mood. So, hope you guys have some fun plans ahead for the long weekend. I wanted to jump on and shoot a quick video and talk about probably one of the most important things that's happened to me in my business over the last 7 years. I wanted to talk to you guys about a shift, kind of a shift in thinking that totally transformed and changed the trajectory of my business. And every business owner that I've talked to and worked with who has implemented this by understanding, first of all, why it's important, why it's critical if you want to grow your business and get past, the high six-figure, low seven-figure range and make growing your business less of a pain in the ass. Once you understand this one thing, it changes everything. And you have to really internalize it and understand there's a lot of nuance under the surface. But I'm going to just start by describing what things were like for me before the light bulb went off in my head and I finally got it. Prior to this, and just for context, so in my business, we manufacture custom truck bodies, and we've got two equipment distribution businesses. So we do compressed air systems for like machine shops, manufacturers, food and beverage, mills, oil and gas, all the industries, anyone that uses compressed air, hospitals. And then we've got a transport refrigeration business, and we're launching another business right now on Amazon for racking for vans for plumbers and electricians. And so a lot of potential for complexity there. We've got a team of over 50 people, right? And so rewind the clock 6, 7 years ago, and I was definitely one of those classic examples of the entrepreneur who's on the fast track to burnout. I was putting in literally over 70 hours a week. I was rarely home for dinner, missing breakfast, couldn't shut my brain off when I was at home. It was starting to take its toll on me. And when I finally realized and had this shift, and without getting into too much of the story, it happened really kind of randomly in a garage in Washington, where we worked with hand in hand with some of the best project managers and team leads, I guess, around the world, from represented from companies like Boeing and John Deere, DARPA, Toyota. And what the shift that took place for me was in understanding these two principles. And they're simple, but complicated at the same time. And the two principles are number one, what gets measured improves. And number two, what gets measured and reported improves exponentially. And so what does that mean? Well, what it means is, the symptom of me, feeling burnt out, spending all that time in the office was essentially, and this is where most business owners struggle, is our business more or less was the equivalent of a basketball or a hockey game that didn't have a scoreboard. We did not have a scoreboard. So in other words, we'd show up to work at the start of the day. We'd come to the office, and we had kind of an emotional sense of, what a good day looks like and whether or not we were having a good day, but we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And this led to different interpretations in terms of, performance expectations, who's doing what, all of the kind of challenges that come about when you lack, transparency and having a good idea of what a good day looks like. And so just to give you some concrete examples, in terms of, let's look at a couple of your departments within your business, right? So a sales department, what does a good day look like? Well, if we look at one day, and our life is essentially the sum of a bunch of days. So today, getting philosophical, today's the only day that exists, right? And so if you look at what does a great average day look like for a salesperson? What does that look like? And if you did not have the ability to talk to that salesperson, how could you see it and know it in terms of, and so what I'm getting at is essentially a scoreboard. And so if you take one day and you expand on that and look at a quarter, what does a good quarter look like for a salesperson? And a quarter is typically 90 days, right? So a quarter for a good salesperson is probably what leads to sales, meetings. What leads to meetings, proper activity management. So if you have a CRM system, for example, if they're managing themselves properly and following up and establishing these meetings and conducting the meetings lead to quotes, the quotes lead to sales, right? So, okay, if we want to get, let's say $1 million in sales by the end of the quarter, what does that look like? What does that translate into per week, right? Obviously. And so if $1 million divided by 12, that's your weekly sales target. And okay, so if that's the case, that's what you want to sell. What is the average salesperson converting at? Is it 1 out of 5 deals? If that's the case, then you're going to need to target $5 million worth of quotes each quarter. So each week it's going to be 5 million divided by 12. There's the weekly target. So sales, quoted. And then we talked about the behaviors. So how do you create a scoreboard for behaviors, the right kinds of behaviors? Maybe if you're using a CRM, if the activities are overdue, meaning they're not managing and maintaining I've scheduled an appointment, I've completed the appointment, I've put in my appointment notes. Always moving that thing forward. The absence to that looks like a crap ton of overdue activities. So how can you measure that? Well, out of all of the activities in your CRM, what percentage are overdue? And if 90% of your activities are overdue, that means that the sales team member is not maintaining a healthy CRM, right? So we're starting from the end and we're reverse engineering it back. So we want sales. Okay, sales are generated from quotes. Quotes are generated from meetings. Meetings are generated from following up and using the right types of activities. And so that's a perfect example of what gets measured improves. So you're looking at what leads up to that final result. And so what this comes back to is, in order to pull this stuff off, you need to have a certain type of culture in place where you value this type of management, this type of thinking. What we're talking about is managing by results, or a results-based work environment. Once you understand that this is the only way that businesses can get on that high growth trajectory, by having a results-based work environment, because the opposite of that is just managing by feel, people coming in and doing what they feel in their heart is kind of best or right. And typically with us humans, we need to acknowledge that we're imperfect creatures. We're creatures of habit, and our default behavior is the lowest friction, the easiest thing to do. And often the most important thing isn't the easiest thing to do. And so if you look at a spectrum of results-based work environment versus, the opposite of that, which is we don't value results, we value people just being busy and coming into the office and sitting down in front of their computer for 8 hours. That's what we value. Well, which company do you think is going to perform better? Obviously the one that's focused on the result, right? We're saying, here's what we want to achieve. Here's what it takes to achieve that. And here are the targets specifically so that we can actually achieve this thing. If you're not doing that, you're essentially leaving things up to fate and randomness. And I don't think any business owner wants to leave things up to fate and randomness. And this in a nutshell is this is why literally 1 out of 5 businesses actually succeed past 5 years, is because, especially when you start out with one business owner, you don't have a team. And so they care. And so they're the ones they're actually following up because they give a shit and they're actually doing all these things. But when you start to manage other people, their motivations are different than the business owner. So that's where you have to have these systems in place that behave and operate as an extension of you. Because wouldn't it be great if everybody was motivated the same way as the entrepreneur? It's not true. It's not the case, right? Some people are intrinsically motivated in that way. But what you need to do is have the system in place that creates those desired behaviors that you have kind of naturally. And you just need to come to terms with the fact that not everyone is motivated by the same things. So to have a system in place that operates as an extension of you, understanding that, humans are inherently fallible, you have to have these measurements in place, and not only just looking at, what did we sell last week. You need targets. You need clear targets, and they have to be realistic. If you give a sales target of 10 million per quarter, and historically you've only ever done like 3/4 mil, how do you think your team's going to react to that? So if you come up with some joint targets, they're realistic, and you actually track them week over week, and you can see trends, and you reward and acknowledge based on results, not on busyness. We don't reward busyness. I've got a picture of a rocking horse in my office, and it says, "Don't mistake motion with progress." And so we really reinforced, whether it takes you 40 hours to get that result or 5 hours, the result is what matters. And this is something that I think all business owners and businesses should aspire to if they want to be in the game for the long term. So just to wrap up, put a bow on the idea of what we've been talking about here today is the two principles which completely transform my business. And this is what we're totally focused towards creating. So true freedom within your business, true freedom being, to have a business that's running like a well-oiled machine with or without you in the office. You need to have a results-based work environment. How do you create that? What gets measured improves. What gets measured and reported improves exponentially. Meaning that the measuring and the reporting is it's a proxy for you essentially. So that means that you no longer have to micromanage, because the measuring and the reporting, which you're looking at hopefully on a weekly basis at least, you're looking at, are the numbers in check? If not, what can we do to bump them up there? And so everybody's focus is on just that. And if you're focused on the system instead of the people, much healthier environment too, because you don't have people, team members aren't throwing people under the bus. You're focusing on the system rather than the person, their flaws, imperfections. You're saying, how can I support you to get these numbers back up to where they need to be? And rather than just looking at a person and their poor performance and making a judgment based on that person, we're looking at, how can we make the system healthy? And so there's a nuance between those different styles of management. But bottom line, if you want to have a self-managed business, you need to have a results-based work environment. That's what it comes down to. And the quickest, easiest way to do that is start to establish the measuring and reporting. And so you're looking at your numbers, you've got targets within your department to say to your team, sales team, here's what healthy looks like. These numbers, these behaviors, because these things lead to this result, which is what we want to see. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to probably have my second coffee of the day, and then I'm going to shut it down. Otherwise, hope you have an awesome long weekend. Hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.